jumping in today, it's the third part series, or the third in the three-part series, speaking to Camp Ronald McDonald for Good Times switch to a virtual walk platform. Again, my name is Shannon. I'm the program associate for Camp Ronald McDonald for Good Times. Before I dive fully into talking about the counselors, I want to give a little bit more background about me. So Jennifer spoke to kind of a career in camping, which was sparked through my initial volunteer experience with Camp Ronald McDonald for Good Times. You can see the picture on the bottom. That is somewhere in my early years in our old dining hall with one of our campers, camp named Disney. So that's Disney and I doing a muscle walk around the dining hall. This experience was definitely one of those that solidified my love for good times and the things that we do at camp. And so that's a nice representation of, kind of my start with Camp Ronald McDonald for Good Times. However, the reality is that start really happened many, many years before that. My sister unfortunately lost her battle with cancer in 1998. We were twins. So she passed away just a couple weeks after our 13th birthday, but she was sick several times throughout our childhood, a couple bouts with leukemia, and then ultimately passed away from a brain tumor, secondary cancer caused from treatment. That experience shaped all parts of me. And it is what directly led me to becoming a volunteer at Good Times. As a kid and as a family, the Ronald McDonald House Charities in LA housed us during our many periods of crisis and trauma in our family's development and growth. And joining in with camp when I was old enough at 19 was a big part of honoring the way that the charity had served us and been available to us as a family. My whole life has been this kind of journey of cancer, and it started with my own experience, and it led me to camp, where I get to continue to have an opportunity to make an impact and honor the life and death of my sister. You see that far right picture is actually a most recent gathering we had with some alumni in San Diego. So part of my job is our alumni cultivation and development, something we've kind of been tackling most recently since I got hired 3 years ago. So this is one of our most recent events, and I think it just really speaks to our community that several of these people are 20 years out of being a volunteer, but they had to see each other and come together. And mostly, if you know Brian Crater, they came to see Brian. He's our associate exec and our really the magic and culture builder behind our program. Brian Crater is great. So they all came to see him. That's a little bit about me, my journey with camp and how it continues. Jumping into the counselors, why you're all here, talking about this virtual walk. Starts with talking about a little bit of a history. So I'm going to be speaking to a lot of the key strategies that our counselors particularly were able to utilize in order to successfully raise a ton of money during our virtual walk for kids. But before that, let's talk a little history. So in 2010 is actually when we started running this event. As you may have heard in other previous presentations from Fatima or Lauren, since 2010, we've been running this event. From 2010 to 2014, we had counselor participation in the walk, but it was much lower. There were a couple teams, maybe of 5 people, maybe of 10 people, and collectively those teams raised on average $30,000 from 2010 to 2014. 2015 was a huge shift. For a few reasons. There was an overall culture shift within camp, within our organization, a belief that we needed to utilize our volunteers year round, and we needed to harness all of the great things that they had to say about camp because they could really speak to our impact better than anyone because they've seen it. You know, I imagine for us, it's hard to get donors up to camp because we're 2 hours, 3 hours away from where most people live. And so our counselors can really speak to that experience along with campers, but as we know, adults are a little bit more eloquent. So in 2015, there's this culture shift within our program to really jump in and start engaging our volunteers year round. And certainly part of that meant using their stories and using their passion and their commitment to camp to help us fundraise, because it's key to our success. We don't have camp if we don't have money, right? And here are these great people who can talk to our impact. So 2015, instead of separate counselor teams, small teams raising about $30,000 collectively, in 2015, the counselors united. So 2 captains from 2 separate teams decided we need to do this all together. We need to build one team and really speak a similar message and promote a similar thing, right? To really come together as a community of volunteers. They all had that in common. And you can see in 2015, a huge jump in what the counselors were able to help contribute in finances to camp. So previous years, $30,000 on average. In 2015, there is $60,000 with 136 team members. Really spiked and increased our participation. You can see throughout the years, there's different levels. There's a couple dips. That's some change in leadership. That's bound to happen. You're gonna have ups and downs in fundraising. The really remarkable thing is in 2020, this year, on April 5th, our counselors, the counselor team to date has brought in $83,314. This is significantly above any of those other numbers that you see. And this all happened in the time of COVID-19. We switched to a virtual walk platform 2 weeks before our Walk for Kids date, which was supposed to be this great celebration at the Coliseum in LA. Thousands of people, the entire charity engaged, and we had to switch to this virtual platform, and we were really afraid of what would happen to fundraising with that switch. It was a forced hand. Obviously, we're all quarantining, we're all social distancing, so that was a part of what was happening. But they were able to take this, what could have been a really rough time to fundraise, and excel. And it's absolutely unbelievable that it happened this year, but that it happened at all. And you can see that reflected in those numbers, a $20,000 increase over any other fundraising year. This speaks directly to the counselor captains that we have this year and the type of commitment and energy and focus and intention they put into supporting their team members, to growing a team, to raising money and speaking to the impact of camp so that they could get as many donations as possible and help send kids to camp. Breathe. So, that's that little bit of history. And then I think it's important to have a little bit of a timeline. So our captains this year, we had 4 captains for the counselor team, all of which were brand new captains. None of them had ever done this before. 3 of them had never actually even participated in the walk. So that tells you it doesn't have to be someone who's used to fundraising, doesn't have to be anyone who already knows how to organize people. These are people that just have a passion and a love for camp, and they're willing to jump on. So they committed to being captains in November. Camp launched our fundraising website, our crowdfunding website, in December. At this point, those captains set a goal. They wanted to recruit 100 walkers to their team, and they wanted to raise $50,000. The idea was that the average, each team member would average about $500. That seems super doable. They also kind of set that goal based on the number of active counselors we have. So we have upwards of around 500 active volunteers. And so getting 1/5 of those seemed very attainable. That's not unreasonable. They didn't ask for half, they asked for 1/5 of that population to join the walk, and they were able to hit that goal. They actually had 104 walkers. So they set their team goal in December, and then come January and February, this is really recruitment time. It's about getting to that 100 walkers so that you're able to raise that $50,000, right? So January and February were all about recruitment. That happened for us initially from the camp side of things to prepare these all captains and for all of our walk teams to support their team members. And so we had a captain's brunch, and I know that Lauren and Fatima both at different times have spoke to this, so I won't dive too far in. But the captain's brunch was an opportunity for camp to share resources and to build community amongst the walk captains, create some unity. So this is where the captains were given resources that would help them motivate, encourage, and take care of their team members. A key piece of the recruitment was a call-a-thon, and that seems a little old-fashioned, but it really worked. So they called 104 people, 104 active volunteers, and of those 104 calls, 42 people registered for the walk. And these weren't necessarily past walkers. So they primarily, of those calls, they decided they wanted to focus on new volunteers. So from the summer prior, who wouldn't have engaged with the walk before because they're new to camp. So they reached out to all of our new volunteers. They reached out to active volunteers who had never walked before, that we didn't have record of walking before. And they went after, this is before COVID-19, they went after finding our camp community that exists outside of California that isn't local. So really trying to build virtual walkers. That ended up playing in their favor because obviously we all switched to virtual. The call-a-thon, again, 104 calls, 42 signups. That was huge in their recruitment to get them to that 100 walker goal. I will note that another very key piece of that, of being able to hit 100 walkers, is that we've had time to build the team. Right, so there's been years. So if you're looking to start a brand new walk, or you're switching to a different platform, or you're doing something, just know that it all happens in increments. It's not, you're not going to get a team. You might, maybe you will, but you're not likely to get in your very first year of an event an $80,000 team. But if you can look to grow that team and build that community and that tightness within that team, that it can grow to 100 people and it can raise $80,000. So there's some recruitment that's kind of built into their team and allowed them to get to that 100 walker goal. Team fundraising really happened in March and April. 5 weeks prior to the walk is when these captains kicked into gear and started really reaching out and really going after and supporting their team members, posting on social media, which I'll dive into later, all of that communication. So all that fundraising really happened in March and then the beginning of April. On March 27th, 8 days before our virtual kickoff, the team hit their $50,000 goal. 8 days later, by April 5th, they had raised $30,000 in 8 days. $30,000 in 8 days is unreal. I'll get into how they accomplished that, particularly through their communication strategies. They finished their final. As of right now, the team has raised $83,314. A couple thousand of that has come in as part of our post-walk efforts, but it's absolutely unbelievable what these counselors were able to raise collectively. So we've done a little bit of history. We talk a little bit about a timeline. Now it's jumping into really where the key strategies came into play, what they did in order to make $80,000 for camp. That first strategy is ground it. So they collectively came together and really grounded their thought process. How are we going to do this? They thought intentionally and strategically, and they did that in two really key ways. The first of which was to focus on a strength-based model of leadership. So there's four people trying to accomplish one job can get a little convoluted. It's like that too many cooks in the kitchen, right? So 4 people, you have to make some decisions. You have to have some conversations. How are we going to do this together? This is where their camp counselor skills come into key play, right? If you're used to having a co-counselor, you know you got to talk out your strategy. How are you going to support these counselors? These counselors were their kids. And that's how they treated that. So they took the time to come together, to spend time together, and to figure out what it is they were each individually good at and how that could serve the team as a whole. This is where it gets fun. I'm even in my themed shirt. So these counselors brought fun all through this whole experience, but they even did it on their own. So this wasn't even something, they dubbed themselves the Ninja Turtles, and this was not something that they like put out for the world. This was really just for them. But it was a way for them to think about where their strengths lie and how they can contribute to the whole. So I'm going to introduce to you our Ninja Turtles, a couple of which, if not all, I haven't checked the videos, are actually on this call, which is great because if any questions come up, they're the experts and they'll be able to answer your questions super well. But I want to introduce you to them because they're some of my favorite people and they deserve an individual shout out for all of that they accomplished. First off, we have Miss Molly Cameron, AKA Raphael, AKA The Muscle. So Molly is one of the most lovable people you'll ever meet. She's probably blushing as I say that because she is definitely on the call. But Molly was dubbed the Muscle because she has the ability to get people to respond. If Molly reaches out, they'll respond. If Molly says, you know, join the walk team. If Molly says, raise more money. If Molly says, make a post, it happens. She is the muscle. It has to do with her likability. Maybe it has to do with both of her parents having met with camp in the 80s. And she is the product of 2 of our volunteers, our own legacy right here. We love Molly. She's wonderful. She's the muscle. Next, we have Brenda, AKA Leonardo, the leader. She's the organizer. She's the delegator, takes on the bulk of the responsibility. We love Brenda. A great leader, was absolutely key to the success of this team, as they each were. But she did definitely take on the brunt of that organization, especially in the conversations and communication that she had with us at camp. Me as their captain sort of person, their manager, and then also Lauren and with Fatima as we work through different development stuff or they need resources. Brenda was the one who took care of that. Next, we have Jasmine, AKA Michelangelo, our heart. Without Jasmine, she created a shift in the focus of the fundraising by being vulnerable and authentic in ways that she always has been. And it was a huge strength to the team as they shifted from focusing on this live event and being in person and going to the walk to this virtual platform, and how it was to fundraise and to start fundraising in COVID-19 with her, like jobs being uncertain and money being tight. She really spoke to the heart and posted some really authentic videos sharing what some of the fears that people might have in asking people for money or fundraising during these times. And I think that really allowed for a shift amongst the team to go, you know what? Yeah, let's focus on something really good, something we love, something we can dive into. And she allowed that heart to make that shift. Next, we have Johnny, AKA Donatello. He is our numbers guy. I'm going to be giving some numbers, not a ton of numbers. If you want a ton of numbers, we can share with you his presentation that he actually, or that the counselors, all 4 of these Ninja Turtles gave to us as camp staff. But they really break down week to week how much money was raised, and it's unreal. So Johnny is our numbers guy. He took care of all the data. He did all of the tracking, which I'll dive into a little bit more, but he took care, if someone raised, hit their goal, he was on it. He had the numbers. He is our numbers guy. This team focused on their strengths. They thought about what they could bring to the whole, and they used that continuously throughout the walk as they delegated different tasks, as they sought to support individual team members. So this is my introduction to our camp counselors, captains, but also the grounding that they did had to do with focusing on this strengths-based leadership model. That was one strategy for grounding themselves. The next strategy, is what they dubbed the ABC model. So as brand new captains to the team, and as I said earlier, 3 of them had never even participated in the walk before, which means they hadn't done any fundraising for camp. So they had some key questions like, how do we raise more money? How do we raise money at all? Fortunately, over the last few years, there's been some really good tracking of the successes of the counselor team. So there's this big Excel document. It has anyone who's ever walked on the team and all of their years of participation, assuming there's multiple years of participation. It'll track their weekly progress as we move up and closer to the walk. So it's this really detailed, and then there's some analysis where it lets you know how many team members raised money, who hit their goal, when did the fundraising, you can like look at it and see when did fundraising really start. Was it 8 weeks out? Was it 7 weeks out? Turns out it's 4 weeks. That's the key. That's when people really start fundraising, 4 weeks before the event. You might also look at, being able to track like how many people raise, $1,000 or more, right? Which leads me into what they identified and called, this is all them as they looked and analyzed this data, the ABC model. They took the team and they broke it into 3 groups. They identified the first group as A players. These are people who raise more than $1,000. We call them super walkers. Okay, your B players are your people, your mid-range fundraisers. They raise between $100 and $999, and your C players raise less than $100. That's no fault of their own. Some people register to walk. They have the best of intentions. It's not a reflection on their character that they raise less money. There's no like concept of one being better than the other. When you look from A, B, or C, you'll see as I move forward that they sought to find ways to support each of these different categories of walkers. Your super walkers, your mid-level, and your not so much, okay? So they identified that, they theorized that their A players have more resources. They have a larger network, right? And so they're able to raise funds. They also put in effort. They send out emails, they do social media posts, they're putting in the effort, and that's also why they're able to raise that money. Your mid-level fundraisers, your B players, they might have a big network, they might not, but we know that they try really hard, right? A lot of effort. Your C players, those raising under $100, we don't know their network. We don't know what their resource is because their effort is low. Again, for a variety of reasons, like say COVID-19, right? So that's going to impact some people's willingness or want or desirability to fundraise. So they took the team and they broke it and they said, okay, these are our 3 types of walkers: A players, B players, C players. This is the kind of resources they have. This is the kind of effort we think they're going to give. And with that, they made some intentions and they identified what success looks like. I'm not going to go into like full detail on this slide because you can access this later, but their intentions essentially were to get, to increase the number of walkers and to increase the dollar amount of each of those walkers, right? That's a pretty good intention. Have people fundraise, right? Specifically, they wanted to increase the number of super walkers, those raising over $1,000. They wanted to see if they could get those mid-level fundraisers to become super walkers, and they just wanted the C to like get $10, right? Whatever that looks like, any progress is great. This leads straight into talking about their key strategy number 2, which was their accessibility. Communication is as key to being accessible. So there's 4 captains, they had 104 people. They thought, how do we manage these 104 people? What's the best way to do this? So they created what they called the 4 teams, 1 dream model in order to divide and support their 104 team members. So 4 captains, they each supported about 25, 26 people that they were directly responsible for figuring out the best mode of communication. So how am I going to get so-and-so to respond to me? Is it through text? Is it a call? Is it an email? Is it Instagram or Facebook? They investigated. They figured out of their individual people, their 4 teams, 1 dream model. They individually reached out to those 25 people, and they just figured out what's the best way to communicate with them. Maybe it was through trial and error. Maybe it was a direct ask. How can I best support you? Something we know at camp, right? That's a common question. How can I best support you? So they took that same model and they used that to support their individual team members, figuring out the best mode of communication for the individual. This is key, okay? From that, and with that, they had regular check-ins. So providing these regular check-ins look like providing resources, giving updates, motivation, celebration. Resources might be, we have this like sphere of influence paper where it allows people to kind of think about their network. Who do I know? And it asks some key questions and helps them think about like, well, who can I ask for money? Who can I ask to donate? So that might be a resource, or maybe it's giving them email templates, or we have an ambassador family that we kind of asked to be the ambassador family each year for the walk, and we share their story. So we provide those resources. They gave team updates. So that might be, you know, like, hey, we're, you know, $500 away from our goal, or we're at 78% of our goal, whatever those updates were. Or it might have been individual, like, hey, oh my gosh, you raised $200 today. That puts you at 89% of your goal. Awesome. And so you're giving them that update. They would regularly check in order to provide motivation to either start fundraising or to kind of give that final push to hit their goals. And they also reached out to celebrate. And this is key, to celebrate them as individuals, but to also celebrate other people on the team and to provide opportunities to celebrate the successes and the commitment of our counselors. That was all done on this individual basis with the 4 teams, 1 dream. Another really key part of being accessible was about being accessible to each other and being available to each other. That meant that they had regular team meetings. This allowed them to re-strategize, to delegate tasks, to update each other on their individual team members, just to see how everyone's doing. They even, in the last couple days of the walk, reported meeting up to 3 times daily. That is an exceptional commitment. Really speaks to the passion of these 4 humans as captains. I wouldn't necessarily expect that of every captain, but meeting up to 3 times daily was really cool because I think it communicates and drives home the importance of communicating, being up to date, and being connected. Their ability to be connected and accessible to each other allowed them to be accessible to other people, which made people feel supported. This was a key to their success. Coupled with this individual reach out, this best mode of communication for the individual, they also simultaneously ran social media platforms. So they managed a Facebook group, though I will note that they probably utilized this the least. They shared stuff that they posted on Instagram to Facebook, but they weren't necessarily creating Facebook specific content. And this has to do with the fact that, well, I don't think they use Facebook very much, or particularly Brenda, who managed the social media accounts, but also the average age of our volunteer is about 24. Now it's anywhere between 19 to 70 something for our volunteers, but most of us, I think, have college age volunteers. Turns out 24-year-olds not on Facebook. So they utilize Facebook the least. One thing, that's something that had been utilized successfully in other years, but as things change, we have to adapt. They really jumped in this year to utilizing Instagram. They opened started a brand new account called Camp Counselors 2020 or something close to that. Aston's actually going to share that in the chat. I'm going to be referencing their Instagram account several times here on out. They really utilized the story features. You'll see if you visit, which I encourage you to go check out that Instagram handle. They have pinned all of the almost all of the stories that they posted or shared with their followers. It's a really great resource. So I'm going to be showing you some things in just a minute and throughout the rest of this presentation, but all of that is accessible on their Instagram. Check out the pinned stories. It's a great resource. You can track everything they did. It's great. But I'm going to point out a few things that I think highlight the type of social media posting that they did and the importance of that posting as well. Here is a plethora of different posts. There are at least 100 more in the same vein, again, shared on Instagram. Go check it out. On the left, you'll see this was an introduction post. So this is actually a photoshopped picture that they put. I can tell because Brenda looks really young, or a lot younger than she does now. But they introduced themselves to their whole team. So at Camp RONALD McDonald for Good Times, we have 5 sessions in the summer, and many of our volunteers just do 1 session a year, which means that you could be volunteering for 10 years. You could have 2 volunteers who've been volunteering for 10 years, but maybe have never met each other. So there was definitely people on the team who had registered who these 4 people didn't know super well, or maybe one person knew the other better, but they didn't all have connections with everyone. So they built that community. They introduced themselves. They did that a couple of times. So that's an example of that post. Whenever someone new joined their team, they shouted them out with a post like this one here, "Welcome to the team, Amanda. We're so excited to have you." And they tagged her. They did thank you posts. They celebrated top walkers. They celebrated individual walkers' success, whether that was them hitting their goal or just having a really successful week. They posted, they shared about it. They celebrated them. They celebrated when team hit their goal, when their team hit their second goal, when their team hit $80,000. There was lots of things to celebrate, and they shared that continuously on their social media. At one point, in the couple of days leading up to the walk, they had 126 stories on their Instagram account. Now, that seems like unreal. How could you even look through that many different posting? But it happened. People were in the mix. So these were, of those 126, this wasn't all individual content that they created, but it was resharing and reposting. Anytime a team member posted something on social media, whether that was their call to fundraise, their note about why they love camp, why they're walking for camp, maybe they're sharing their own cancer stories, whatever that is. Whenever someone shared something on Facebook, they would reshare and tag, and reshare and tag, and reshare and tag, and reshare and tag. That is a key to navigating social media platforms. Reshare and tag everything. Anything you can that's about your program, and certainly in time of an event. So they did absolutely fantastic with that. One thing, I don't have the graph here, but again, I can give you their presentation. There is a clear, it's very obvious from the numbers that the more they posted on social media, the more the dollars rose. They, in the final days, in the 8 days leading up to the walk, they raised $30,000. This is when they had the most social media presence. This is in that same time period where there was a day with 126 stories, right? Sharing and creating the vibe and the energy and the excitement goes a really long way. Jumping in to key strategy number 3, engage. Engage, engage, engage. So different ways that the counselor team was able to be engaging outside of just simple posts and thank yous, which you saw there. There's also some interactive opportunities and some really vulnerable, authentic opportunities for the team members to engage. So on social media, obviously I said post a ton. That is key to keeping people engaged and getting people engaged. Another thing is to make it interactive. There was a couple of things that the counselor team, whether it was captain motivated or it was team member motivated, they put on a couple different interactive opportunities. One of those was a cabin night, unit night poll. So cabin and unit night are two of our evening programmings, and they had like a competition based on, you know, $2 donation if you think it's cabin night, $2 donation if you vote for a unit night, and that money actually went to support our two captains for our teen leadership walk team. So it was like, if you think unit night's the best, go for Ethan. Donate to Ethan. If you think unit night's the best, donate to Monet. And so it helped our teen campers with their fundraising, but also got the counselors engaged in this like poll of what's better, right? A little competition gets people excited. Amongst the camp counselors, this didn't necessarily go outside of the camp counselors, and it wasn't necessarily a fundraiser, but it was a good community builder. They did a no shame for camp, where you could be challenged to share your most embarrassing story. This is not something I would have participated in, but it was definitely something the counselors got involved in, and was a really neat way for them to connect, particularly during these times of social distancing. The third very interactive event that the team was able to have virtually was what's called a dumb dice tournament. So dumb dice is a game that we play with our mostly our counselors during our kind of night off time, our fellowship time. We play this game called Dumb Dice. So there was initially a fundraiser before COVID-19 hit to do like a March Madness pool, and that was canceled, and obviously, and so our creative counselors just turned it around and decided not to be let down by not having a basketball pool and having that money go to camp, but to make it really campy. And so they did this dumb dice tournament. It was all virtual and live, and there was brackets and awards. It was all out, and that raised about $1,500. And that was just counselors. That was all on their own. We didn't facilitate that as part of camp, but it was unreal seeing all the Facebook Live and the whole engagement of all of our counselors. That was a key way that at that time for them to come together in the face of social distancing and the disappointment of not having the walk. Key, 3 interactive, fun, creative ways to engage via social media or just, you know, computer. Another way, and this obviously was happening throughout, as I've mentioned, is to build a sense of community. This is really where some of the authentic calls to action happen. So I spoke to Jasmine. She was the heart of speaking to this switch to a virtual platform and how to fundraise in difficult times. So there was this really authentic call to action. Also, an attempt to build community and to increase fundraising, we really wanted to focus on the why, right? Always on the why. Why do we do camp? What is the impact? Why is it important? Why donate, right? So focus on the why. Part of the camp's campaign, actually charity campaign, was to encourage #WhyWeWalk videos. And this was meant to be sort of an authentic speaking of like why I walk and why I participate. And we know people like videos more than reading text, and so we encourage the video. I'm actually going to share Johnny's. I know in past presentations you've seen a couple Why We Walk videos. Johnny's here on this call today, and I'm talking about all of his successes, so I think it's only appropriate to share his Why We Walk video. I'm going to do that now for you all.
Hey everyone, Johnny here, and if you know anything about me, you know for the last 6 years I've been volunteering with a nonprofit called Camp RONALD for Good Times. This is a camp that provides a fun, safe place for children and families affected with cancer. What makes this camp so special is that we create an environment for kids to be kids, to laugh, to sing, to dance, to grow, to discover who they really are. Everything we do at camp, from fishing to archery to eating, has intention behind it. We teach them how to.
Oh, I'm sorry, everyone.
Hey everyone, Johnny here, and if you know anything about me, you know RONALD for Good Times. This is a camp that provides a fun, safe place for children and families affected with cancer. What makes this camp so special is that we create an environment for kids to be kids, to laugh, fishing to archery to eating has intention behind it. We teach them how to communicate, how to be self-reliant, and we create an environment that gives them the choice to push themselves further than they've ever pushed themselves before. Camp is by far the most important thing that I do in my life. And this is why I'm coming to you for help. As I mentioned, camp is a nonprofit and solely relies on donations and volunteers like myself. In less than 1 month, camp is having its largest fundraiser, which is a walkathon. It is my goal as a team captain to raise $3,000 by that time. So if you're feeling generous, if you just got your tax return, if you've been looking for a nonprofit that you can trust, if you want to make a difference in the lives of children that need it, please consider donating to my page. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Excellent. So that was Johnny's Why We Walk video. I love it because it speaks specifically to our camp outcomes, but also was really authentic. You could feel his level of commitment and care and belief in what he was doing. So hashtag Why We Walk videos were a huge part of building a sense of community. We also encourage people to share their stories. So we definitely have former campers who become volunteers and for the counselor team, and then are now fundraising on the counselor team, and they have a specific story to share, an ability to speak to impact that others can't. And so we encourage, they encouraged everyone to share their story. Another really key way to build community is to kind of like create some swag that you all get to wear. In this case, and this year, Brenda was able to, through a connection, get these camp logo necklaces. I'm not wearing mine. Fatima's in the screen somewhere. You think she has hers on. But it's a little pendant with the camp logo on it. There were 104 team members. Over 50 people bought these necklaces. The portion of the proceeds went to the team fundraising. This was a really great unifier and something that they all will continue to have, and also wore on the walk day when they had this Zoom call, which I'll talk about more later. So getting some sort of swag, a team thing that pulls everybody together, that's really huge. They were also able to use that as a fundraiser, which was really smart, right? Last thing they did to build, or one of the other things they did to build a sense of community is to really provide recognition for each of their team members. So I think that that was pretty evident in some of the posts that I shared a couple slides back. They were celebrating new team members, shouting out to hitting goals or hitting fundraising. Sometimes it can feel like, oh, maybe I'm posting too much, or, am I just inflating ego? Like, I don't, people are weird about what they want to post on Facebook or Instagram sometimes. But the really key and important part of providing recognition is that you are honoring and respecting and recognizing the commitment that these individuals are bringing to your program. And that happens in the summer, and that happens in fundraising. All of it is important, right? So we never stop recognizing our volunteers for any reason. We always want to make sure that they feel the love and they feel recognized and they feel honored and a part of the community. So you have to do public praising. Private praising is also good, which is what they were able to manage with that 4 teams, 1 dream model. Really key to their engagement was also the creation of different contests and incentives to encourage fundraising. Here's an example of 3 of them. Again, if you check out their Instagram handle, you will see a whole pinned section on incentives and contests, and you can see how they announce these contests and the kinds of contests they did. I'm going to talk just about 3 of them real quick. On the left, you'll see a fast pass. So for us with registration for summer, it's a little bit about like getting a ticket to a Beyonce concert on Ticketmaster. Like, it's really hard sometimes to get registered. We even crash Ultra Camp, our registration program. A really great problem to have. We have so many volunteers who are like, I gotta get my session. So one of the things that we periodically offer throughout the year, definitely during walk season, is a fast pass. This means that they can get any session in any role that they want without having to manage the mania of the Hunger Games situation that is volunteer signups. Now, This was something that was offered earlier in the walk season. Since then, Camp Ronald McDonald for Good Times has announced that we are moving to alternative camp programming this summer. And so we won't have a traditional sign up for counselors for our summer sessions, but we'll definitely honor this for next year. Fast Pass, one of their contests, really big. They did some camp sock bundles. They did camp swag bundles. They also, in the final weeks of the walk, had 5 different really big prizes. If you're looking closely at this screen at the top of this final week prizes, it says tattoo on Molly's booty. What? Yes, that's right, folks. Molly was willing. This is how much she trusts our volunteers. But good for her. She said, if you raise the most money, you can pick the tattoo that I am going to put on my bottom. That's commitment on so many levels. There was also the opportunity to win a Fitbit. There was some Star Wars memorabilia. You could name your own star. These were prizes for our top winners. These incentives and these prizes are something that they were able to get a hold of on their own, except for the bottom one. Anything that's like camp swag, the fast pass, camp was able to provide those incentives for the team, but you'll see some of this other stuff and certainly other contests that are posted again on social media on their Instagram handle. You'll see that they were actually just able to use their resources in their network to find different prizes to use to incentivize fundraising. So looking at these contests and incentives, and one of the ways that they were most engaging and kind of really key is taking it back to that ABC model. They had their A players, their B players, and their C players, right? Those different ways to categorize their team members in relationship to how much money they could individually fundraise. So their contests were set intentionally to encourage and help them meet those intentions and decide what success looks like. This means, so there was a threshold contest. This means that if you raise $100, you're entered into this raffle to win a summer fast pass. There's also top fundraising contest. So this is whoever raises the most money in this amount of time, this week or these 2 weeks. Those are top fundraising prizes and threshold. So your threshold both contests are really key. Your threshold serves those mid-level fundraisers, right? Raising $100 to be entered into a fast pass is attainable, it's doable, and it's exciting. And it's within their range of, it fits their network and their ability to fundraise. Now, that's not super exciting for a top fundraiser. On the team, the highest grossing person on the team actually raised $15,000. Now, being entered into a contest where he has to win 100 and he has an equal chance as everybody else to win this prize is not necessarily motivating. So you have to have also contests that are about raising the most money, right? Because that's going to attract your super walkers, your A players, those who tend to raise or have the capacity to raise more than $1,000. That is evident on those final week, those big ones, right? Like, that's a big deal. You get to tattoo Molly. Like, you better raise a lot of money to get that prize, right? So these threshold prizes and these top fundraising prizes were grounded in that first key to success, which was about grounding it, setting a theory, setting an idea behind the type of fundraising that they wanted to do and how to motivate their team members. So threshold and top fundraiser prizes, or contests, sorry. Key strategy number 4, if all the fun hadn't been brought already, more fun to come. Okay, this is really key to the success. It was a big part about it being engaging was to bring the fun. And they brought the fun in all kinds of ways, not just with encouraging or motivating or recognizing, but also in the ways that we fundraised. So I think it was actually one of the team members, her name is Emmeline, she was a former camper. She came up with this idea, very creative way to fundraise. I think we've spoke about it in other presentations in previous weeks, but these are bingo cards. These were posted on primarily Instagram stories, as an opportunity to fundraise. Hey, put this on the story, donation challenge. If someone donated $15, then you would tag them. So you would start a story, create a text, and tag them over the amount. So I might put like Shannon Edwards donated $15 to Johnny, who posted this bingo card, and he would tag me in that and cover the $15 and be like, hey, yay, congratulations, and repost that. And every time you get a donation, you get a new heart or circle filled out, you repost it, right? So you're creating this buzz and this energy, and then the card gets full and you're like, oh my gosh, we filled a card, that's unbelievable, and you celebrate with your network. These were also reshared by the counselors on the counselor Instagram account, which you should definitely check out if I haven't made that clear. So these are those bingo cards, super key, and really creative, bringing the fun way to fundraise. Now, one side note that I think is really important as camp professionals and fundraisers and whatever brought you to this call, you'll see at the top of these cards, it says Venmo. So this was started by counselors, something that inspired them. It wasn't something that we thought of actually from the camp end, though we're super just blown away by their creativity. It says Venmo, and I actually would encourage you all to not, if you were to replicate something like this, to not use Venmo. If someone makes a donation to an individual, say Johnny's bingo card, and I donated $15 and I Venmo'd him that information, that $15, camp has no way of knowing that I was a donor. So you're going to want to always send them. So we have the official Walk for Kids page, and each team member has their own individual URL and place to donate. And that is actually what I would encourage to go in place of the Venmo. Just from the camp side and donor database, you want to get all that information so that you're able to stay in touch with your donors. So these examples in particular just had Venmo. Some counselors put their URL because this was just created separate from camp and by the counselors and their inspiration. They were being, very innovative in doing this, and it definitely contributed to some good fundraising, but difficult for data, for donor data. But bingo cards were hugely successful. Thousands and thousands of dollars were raised using these bingo cards. Really great way to bring the fun. Wrapping up all of the fun was what happened on our virtual walk day. So streaming on the Facebook account for Ronald McDonald House Charities of Southern California was a series of live and pre-recorded content that was streaming from 8 to 10 on April 5th, 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. on April 5th. And during that time, the counselors, because they couldn't be together at the event, they still wanted to join together, which was part of our key messaging for the walk. If we can't be together, let's still join together. They created this big Zoom call, and you can see the pictures on the right. There were, at least half the team who joined in on the Zoom call. They had a ton of fun. If you want to see the recording of that Zoom call and all of the activities that they did through that virtual walk time, you can check that out on their handle on Instagram, which was shared in the chat. During that time, they did things like Most Spirited, and you can see in these pictures, people actually like decorated their pillows with their camp shirts. They pulled out all the camp swag they had. They put camp shirts on their dogs. They found ways to get spirited, and then the captains honored and shouted them out on social media as Most Spirited or Top Fundraiser. All of that was celebrated within that final Zoom call on the morning of the virtual Walk for Kids on April 5th. All of this is what contributed to $80,000 worth of fundraising, an absolutely exceptional feat. So in review, key strategies utilized by our captains who brought in this incredible $80,000 is they grounded it. They looked at the data and they said, okay, what kind of walkers do we have and how do we meet the needs of those individual people? They also grounded it by focusing on their strengths so that they could delegate tasks and delineate things in a way that made sense based on what they were good at as individuals, right? They were accessible. They worked all the communication channels, doing that individually and doing that on social media platforms. They were engaging as heck. They did those cabin unit night. They did the dumb dice tournament. They did all these different opportunities and ways that people could engage on social media. And they brought a ton of fun to the final day, but also throughout the whole thing, by sharing and reposting and honoring and recognizing. All of that is the key. Those are the key pieces, the key strategies that led to these counselors' success. So we have actually, Fatima, Lauren, will you jump in? Like, is Classy?
No, actually,
I can't remember the walk back
yeah,
then.
we use Luminate.
Luminate.
But what I mentioned in our very first workshop was that that platform might be a little bit too much for a smaller organization. The reason we use Luminate is because we're part of a larger organization, Ronald McDonald House Charities of Southern California. So there's 9 different walks that are happening at the same time that are we're all doing our own fundraising effort, raising money for our own prospective programs. So I gave some suggestions on like looking at Give Lively, because there's a text to donate option, which could be a good option with those bingo cards that Shannon shared. So Give Lively is a great one where you can do some peer fundraising, and then Classy is also a great potential platform to do some peer fundraising as well. But again, I would try to look for something like a Give Lively where there's a text to donate option.
The entire walk is a solid 5-month process. So we start, gathering commitment from our captains. We launch our website in December, and that's where we really jump into our walk fundraising and recruitment efforts. The actual walk virtually was a 2-hour period on April 5th from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. So the actual walk was much shorter, as the event would have been itself, right? But the fundraising is over that 5-month process that, early on, we launch the website, we focus on outreach and recruitment, and then fundraising kicks into gear in March, which was about 5 weeks out from our walk event.
So I think that one thing that we really learned was just to be more than text, like getting on video and being us, like bringing a face to the whole overall goal really made it more personal, and people felt that they were recognized because we were talking to them. It wasn't just the computer screen and some words that we typed out for them. They felt more connected, and I think that made all the difference, is really remembering, like, why are we doing this? We are a community. I'm talking to you, not this Instagram page. It's me. I'm talking to you. I need your help.
For me, as what we showed on the numbers guide. So I think what really helped was really trying to identify who to put, like where to put our eggs in which basket, right? With the ABC model, and using that to our benefit, and honestly tracking. If you're not tracking, you can't measure your growth. If you can't measure your growth, you don't know what's working and what's not working. So we were tracking all the time, and we were relaying all that information all the time. Literally, we're texting every day. This person just raised this much, then we're shouting it out. But if I were to point our success to just one thing, it would probably be the way we outreached people. And it was just, it was a lot of fun. We made it so much fun.